We'll shortly be starting the webinar. We're just going to leave it a couple more minutes for a few more people to join. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this series of webinars that focuses on delivering and updating you on the new features and functionality that will be available to you and your organizations in Oracle's latest release, 20D. My name is Chris Gomez, and I'm an account director here at Evosys. My focus is on demonstrating the value that our next generation managed services, as well as some of the other innovative Evosys technologies, has on achieving maximum business value on Oracle Cloud applications. As we know, Oracle provide quarterly updates that are designed to continually drive operational excellence and enhance the user experience. And so today I'm your host for this webinar, where I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Vishnupriya Narasimhan, who works in our ERP Centre of Excellence team and will be taking us through the payroll enhancements in 20D, but today it's with specific focus on those that are relevant to our UK customers. So Priya has over 10 years of experience across the entire HCM suite for Oracle modules, and is currently leading the entire managed services for HCM, which obviously includes payroll as well. So Priya will be taking you through the hot topics and everything that you need to know about the main features of this release for payroll. And we hope to cover all the features in this webinar and then make the slides available to you. So by means of an agenda, over the next 50 minutes, we'd like to cover three main areas. So firstly, I'll talk a little bit about our approach to Oracle updates before handing over to Priya, who will analyze the latest release, providing an insight into those new features that are available, as well as highlighting things to consider when you're actually deploying these features. And this will cover known issues that need to be considered. So Priya will take us through this in around 35 minutes before I then continue and take you through our next generation managed services and how they can help you, or how it can help you with these Oracle releases. So we will leave some time at the end to cover questions, but if I could ask you to actually ask those questions in the chat function that you have available to you as we go through the webinar, we will then cover those questions at the very end. Okay, so when we talk about an update, there are generally four main categories of events that we must consider prior to deployment. So first and foremost is the analysis. So we need to analyze and consider each of the options that are available to be rolled out and the impact that those features may have on the user experience and productivity. Secondly, we must analyze and plan how we deploy those updates that we've decided on as part of the analysis phase, and then carry out some sort of impact analysis on the business and the impact it will have before deploying these updates. After planning comes the testing phase, which is everybody's favorite. Obviously, we need to test to ensure that there are no fundamental impacts to the business once the features are deployed. And this is, generally speaking, the most intensive stage in this four-stage process and needs to be done methodically to ensure that there are no surprises. And then finally, it's about launching that release once you're happy that the tests have not uncovered any showstoppers or serious headaches. So once I hand over to Priya, her focus will be on supporting that first stage. And then later, as I've talked to you about some of those services that are included in the managed service offering, I'll look to cover those other three areas. So I just want to talk you through the structure of the new feature slides that Priya will be using. Some of you may already be familiar, having attended some of the previous sessions that we've had this week or in previous quarters. But please use this as a reminder whilst I take those that are new to these webinars through these areas. So we include the feature name, a short description, and the business benefit. so that you can see the impact it may have on your organization with the outcomes that it could give you. We then include a high-level impact analysis on the right here with 4 main areas. So we include the impact level that helps to gauge the amount of testing that's required, whether or not the feature needs to be enabled, whether it needs to be configured, and also whether or not it's a quick win. And this effectively takes into account the level of effort and time that's required to get that feature set up. Okay, so just before we move to talking about those features, I just wanted to run a quick poll that we've done across all of the webinars this quarter. Because what we want to do is we just want to understand how you perceive Oracle's quarterly updates. Do you see though that these updates as an unnecessary overhead, or do you actually see that they're a value add? I just want to run this poll for about 30 seconds to give all of you an opportunity to answer the question. So thank you for everyone who's voted so far. Just going to leave it open for a little while longer. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you all to just finish up voting now, as I'm just going to move towards closing off this poll. Brilliant. Okay, so the results are in. Just share those results with you. It's actually quite interesting. Throughout the other series of webinars that we've run this week, which included finance and some of the other modules in the HCM world as well as supply chain, the actual value add was significantly higher, near the 80%. But obviously, it's good to see that 60% of you do see these as a value add. But for the 40% of you that voted that you feel like it's an overhead, there may be some services at the end that I'm going to cover that will help in actually reducing that burden that you're facing every quarter. Okay, so Priya, I'm sure everyone is eagerly waiting to hear from you about this release. Can you tell us, what we're going to expect from 20D, specifically around those features in the payroll for the UK market?
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Chris, for the quick introduction. So today we're going to look at the features on payroll. So we're going to start with global payroll and then move on to specific features in UK payroll. In total, we've got 18 new features that's come up for 20D, out of which 10 qualify as quick wins, and 8 of them are the rest features. So which means that it requires a bit more time and effort in order to test, enable them, and start using those features. Or it could also mean that it would be eligible for any new setup and probably not for the existing one. So quickly moving on to the quick wins. The first one is a simple yet a powerful tool for us. On the filter for view flows, so when you want to view flows, you had certain search filter criteria. So you now have an option also to look at submitted by. So you can try search the flows that were submitted by a single person, and so get those results and restrict your results based on your needs. So a better search facility is the benefit that you receive out of this. The next one is more on the configuration perspective. So whenever we configure elements or when we create elements, there are some backend processes that runs called the ESS element creation process. Now in the earlier status, when these elements were created, and let's say the concurrent program behind errored, then we were not able to delete those elements without scripts. So we had to run scripts to actually delete them. But now on the element search page, if the ESS has errored out, you can simply click on actions and delete, and the element would be deleted. The errored element would be deleted. So it avoids the need of scripts. So it's more easier and faster. The next feature is again on the search enhancement. So when we go to the manage elements page to actually search for an element, on the advanced tab, so on the basic search you have few fields, but then you also have the ability to click on advanced and then add fields. So you now have element code which is added as part of this attribute, so you can start looking at elements, so searching for elements using element code. So the benefit here is that you might have very similar element names, but then the element code would actually help you to easily identify those elements where you have similar element naming conventions. So that's about this feature. Okay. The next one is again a process streamline that has happened. So as we just spoke, whenever we create elements, there are a lot of formulas, balances, rules that are automatically created by the Fusion system. So now, as part of this enhancement, what has happened is whenever we create a voluntary deduction or a pre-tax deduction element, there are many rules that are usually created. Okay, but now those rules are restricted based on the choices that we make on the element template. So all of you would be aware that you have an element template where you choose what is the purpose of this element, how do you want to configure, whether it's recurring, non-recurring, and there are various rules on the template. So now, first thing, a stop rule, so which is created only if you have selected the total owed option. So what is a stop rule? Is basically it tells you that when the element entry should be stopped. So if you've already collected all the amount back from the employee, so that if the total owed becomes 0, that's when you want the element entry to be stopped. So this particular rule is created only if we had selected the option of total owed when we create voluntary deduction or a pre-tax deduction. Similarly, even if we had selected total owed, but if we had chosen NOS processing stop when the total is reached as no, even then the stop rule is not created. So there are two criteria based on which the stop rule will be created. One is you should have selected total owed option when you create the element, and second, you should have chosen yes when for this option, which is called processing stop when the total is reached. So this gives you more control, and especially when you want to change the flag of multiple entries, yes or no, especially for non-recurring elements, you might want to go ahead and change, sometimes allow multiple entries, but we were not able to do that before of this because of this stop rule. So in case you don't have a stop rule against that element, you can now easily go change the multiple entries flag from no to yes. Okay, this is a huge change on the retroactive pay process, especially for changes in hire date. So let's assume, let's go by an example to understand this much better. So let's say an employee's hire date is in the middle of the period, like 15th March, okay? But it's entered in the system as 15th March, but actual hire date of the employee is, let's say in the previous period, say 15th Feb or 20th Feb, okay? Now, this you realize only after you finish a February run that the employee was not paid. So now what you can do is you can simply, obviously the HR would notice that there has been an error. The hire date should have been, let's say 15th Feb, not 15th March. They change it, but this change is done after your payroll processing of February is complete. Now, what will the retro pay process do is that it will pick up these changes as well, calculate, and process it, and those results would be then pushed to the next open pay period. So in our example, it could be pushed to the March period. So that's the enhancement. Now, this change in hire date could be, even within the same period. So let's say, for example, you had it has 15th Feb, but then the hire date was 10th Feb. So even then, this retro pay process would pick. So, or you can also have multiple changes within the same period. So two changes in the same current pay period also can happen. So this is a huge enhancement for customers who have retro pay enabled and using. So you can avoid a lot of manual adjustments that you had to do earlier. So that's a process optimization here. And this is something that I think all the payroll members should actually test and use. The next one is an enhancement on the consolidation group. So until now, we just had a consolidation group name. Okay, but now going forward, we have a consolidation set code which we associate for every group. So this is more like, for customers who understand or who knows the configuration. Every time, for example, you have an element name, you have a backend name for it, which is called as code. So now on the consolidation group, we didn't have this code concept earlier. So whatever you enter here is also the link in the backend. So now this has been introduced. So what is the benefit of having this code is that you can now change the name. So let's say you want to rename this consolidation set for XYZ reason. You can go ahead and rename it, and still it won't impact any previous processes that were run using this consolidation group, because it is always now linked internally with the code and not with the group name. So you can also use this code while you're doing data uploads or any other upload services, and it's more easier rather than using the group name, because the group name you can now modify it. Okay. The next one is on load errors report, which is on the HCM data loader. So there are more additional validations that are now there on the load HMRC file process. So the XML file, which is an inbound file from HMRC, that particular file is now validated with various options, and then these are also reported. These validations and validation errors are reported in the audit report file of the. So when you go to the load HMRC process and sub process and look at the audit report, you can now see these validations. So just to give you an example of what are these validations, so there's one validation, for example, on the P6 or P9 process, which now includes if there are valid P45 actions, are the tax codes right, are the tax basis values right. So you have various factors when you do a P6 or P9. Okay. It also can check, for example, any combination of values, these combination of values are valid or invalid, and all of that is reported in the audit report. There are also additional checks, for example, at the payee level. So you now can it checks that you can have only one payee component that can report a national insurance YTD at any single point of time. So we can't have two payee components reporting. That's actually not acceptable by HMRC. So you also ensure that you don't load any data like that. So when, for example, when we do NB, REP, inbounds, you can also check if the NI number formats are correct, if the prefixes are correct, if the suffixes are valid. So maybe when you, for example, if you do student loan or a postgraduate loan, you can also ensure. So if you have a loan deduction stop date, is this date greater? Ideally it should be greater than or equal to the loan deduction start date. So such validations checks are already there. So what's the benefit of having so much validation is that we can now easily identify any errors that can come up when we do HCM data load up. So, earlier without these validations, we weren't able to identify very easily on what is the error or why it's failed. But now these validations actually help us to identify them and ensure that we have right data loaded. The next one is an update on removing end date for components. Again, this is a very wanted feature. So when sometimes we make any mistake at this end, it was very difficult earlier to remove an end date. The associations would get collapsed. So there were a lot of concerns around this page, but now it's more easier. You have a remove end date button against the component page on the component page. So you can just click on this, and then you'll be able to remove the end date. So what actually happens when you remove the end date is that the current end date, whatever you're trying to remove, would be replaced with an end date which is earliest. So between what is there on the component and what is there on the TRU, the tax reporting unit. So basically, it will check what is the earliest date in between these two, and then put that as the new end date for the component. So on the payee card, these updations would happen on payee details, new starter notifications, and also the assignment notifications. And for NI, it would happen on the component and the assignment associations. So it's a benefit here that it's easy if you want to correct any end date concepts. So earlier, either we had to, this would create confusions, and sometimes incorrect entries would go, and we would have to raise an SR with Oracle to clear up the data fix, data bugs. So this is a lot more easier and very clear when we want to end date something. The next one is on mass global transfer and synchronization. So we all have seen, there has been a lot of benefits with mass legal employer change, mass global transfers from 20B and 20C. It has improved a lot. Now on 20D, you also can ensure that you copy the assignment and work relationships from the source assignment to the destination assignment as on the global transfer date. So it's more easier, quicker, even when you want to do it in bulk. And then you also see what is the success factor, absence success, calculation cards, compensation. So it gives you in detail for each and every person. That's about quick wins, which are default and requires no configuration. So let's move into ones which require minor configurations. So you now have the ability to override the average weekly earnings at the leave agreement level. So basically, just to give you a heads up, the average weekly earning for shared parental leave usually is calculated when the employee leave agreement is created. So now with this new feature, what you can do is you have the ability to override the calculated value. So this feature would be applicable only for new elements that are created after the feature is available. So which means after 20D upgrade is done, and then you create new elements for shared parental leave, you would be able to do the override of average weekly earnings at the leave agreement level. You can also see details of what was there overridden before. So if before this upgrade feature, if you had overridden at the absence level, you can still see what is that overridden value. So it's easier, you don't lose any information. But then just a point to note is that we have to enter this override on AWE before we enter the end date of the leave agreement, so that the LEL checks are all proper. So it's a more control where you can go ahead and override the values. So that's about the new features that are quick wins. So let's quickly move on to the rest of the features. So this is on payroll data capture when we have multiple concurrent assignments. So for those of you who haven't attended the previous session, just a quick heads up on what is this multiple assignment security. So starting from 20D, Oracle has introduced a security level at the assignment level. So until now, we had security only at the person level, but now it's drilled down towards the assignment level. So what does that mean? Is that you can control what people can see and cannot see based on their need for a particular assignment. So if I have a manager who's only looking at one particular assignment of an employee, then he would only see at that assignment details and not about the rest of the assignments that the employee might have. So the impact of this security is there in various modules, including payroll. But the payroll, it is very limited to few actions, like the quick actions on payroll relationships, element entries, calculation entries, and costing per person. So it's only applicable to these 4 levels now. So in case if you enable at your organization level, if you enable the assignment level security profile, you can only restrict on these 4 items within the payroll section. So the benefit of the assignment security is obviously giving right access to right people. So you have a proper data, secure data, and you only show people that they are liable to see and not everything. The next feature is on the payroll post processing. So you have a lot of post processes that you have to do after you finish your payroll, like transferring the information to cash management, or transfer to GL, calculating costing of payments. So all of these processes you can now run using consolidation group. So until now, you didn't have the consolidation group option at these processes, but the benefit here is that this is attached. So if you want to do certain reporting based on your consolidation group for costing of payments or payment informations to cash management, you can do that now because you're running it with a consolidation group. Okay, this one, there are two enhanced reports that would allow you to extract periodic balances, which is called periodic payroll activity report and periodic statutory deductions register. So now see, this is same, it's going to give the same output if you run your existing reports with just the latest process set to no. So you have a parameter which is latest process YTD totals only. If you set that to no, what output you receive, it's the same output that you would receive with these two new reports as well. So what's the benefit of having these two reports is that for organizations which have got large volumes of data, these two reports run faster. So there has been an enhancement at the code level of the report. So you don't see a change at the front end in terms of the output, but then it's an enhanced process, so your performance is increased. You can also have the option to run this for just the run details, which is just the month, or just the payroll run details, or year to date or month to date. So you have different dimensions based on which you can get the values. The next is an advancement on the prepayment and payment results on the responsive UI. So it's more mobile friendly now. You can look at the prepayment and payment results. So you can see what's the bank account number, bank name, check details, and everything here at one glance. And you can also, look if you see you have a process LOV here. So you can just choose the process LOV if you want to see different details of the same person. So you don't have to go back to the person results page and then choose a different payroll period and then come again see. But you can just choose the process search or the list of value to go to a different period and see those details. So it's more easier and it's now mobile friendly as well. The next one is an enablement on the HCM data loader. So you can also manage payroll relationship information using HCM data loader. So until this time, we didn't have that concept. So the example given here is more with respect to UAE, but then this could be applicable to any HCM data loader that we may want to do. Could be because of statutory details or could be for any other reason. But if we want to do a payroll relationship upload using HCM data loader, we can do that. Okay, this is an atom feed. So what does the atom feed basically tells you is that you have the data real time. So this is more beneficial for customers where they have HCM cloud and sometimes an external payroll processing system. So if you make any change or assign a payroll or update the payroll assignment for an employee, it is immediately real time uploaded to the downstream systems. So a lot more for people who don't have Fusion payroll but have global HR. Yet another wonderful feature, but then requires a lot of additional setup to be done, is that you can now add a reference code on the BACS file for voluntary deductions or pension deductions. So that's a lot more easier to identify, but requires a setup to be done in order to run this feature successfully. This is on the monthly contributions report. So on the teacher's pension report, there's an enhancement that you can record additional information. So you can do that at the legal entity level. So for example, you can capture what's the MAT number, what provider number. So you can capture this information so that it gets reported on your teacher's pension monthly contributions report, monthly reconciliation report, sorry. So that's about the new features that we have. So there are certain known issues, a couple of them, or I should say more of them, repetitive from what we saw in 20C. So for example, this was also there in 20C where you don't have the professional payslip on the global search. Task iteration status wasn't available. So this was also there on 20C. So I'm not getting into details because it's just repetitive and there's no workaround for these issues. So if you've already faced it, you know how you have to handle them. Again, the automatic element entries also was an issue used when we used HCM data loader, and the option was that if we want to load without any historical information, then it was working fine. We were able to create automatic entries, but otherwise automatic entries were not getting created when it was uploaded using HTL. Again, an issue that's continuing from 20SC. I guess this one is a new one where view payment results link actually takes you to the user classic page rather than the responsive. So if you're trying to navigate from my client groups, quick actions, and go to payroll work area or global search, this is actually taking you to the classic version instead of the responsive UI. So the workaround is to use a different navigation, which is from payroll work area, process result summary, payment process, and then drill down to employee, or a drill down to payments process. Okay, this is also a new one. So there is an inconsistency that is noted when you use the submitted by feature. So which we saw right now, there has been an enhancement on view flows page, right? The first feature that we saw on the webinar today. So there is a bug on that where sometimes there is inconsistency on the submitted by. So similarly, it's also on the checklist, payroll checklist, where the full name is displayed for the submitted by or owned by attributes. So Oracle says it would correct this in the later release. Third-party payment rollup is an issue that's continuing from 20B, I guess. So that's still there. And that brings us to the end of the session. And I would like to hand it over to Chris to take you forward.
Thanks very much for those for that analysis there, Priya, on some of the features that are relevant to obviously payroll, specifically in the UK market. Hopefully there's some things there that each of our guests can look at and deploy and benefit from. So earlier when I introduced the session, we spoke about that 4-stage process where we had the analysis phase, the plan, the test, and the launch. And obviously Priya's given us some useful information for that analysis phase, and we can sort of take that away and look at each of those features to see whether or not they're going to be valuable to the organization. Once you've finalized your analysis after today, you'll no doubt start the planning and the rollout with your teams to commence testing. If you're already an Evosys customer and you want us to be involved in any of these phases, please do reach out to our to your project manager. And if you're not an Evosys customer, wanting to know a bit more about how we can help in these phases, please do get in touch with us and we can talk you through our services. One of the most exciting areas is our use of a technology that can automate your testing and save up to 70% of testing time. We all know that the overhead that UAT creates across a business, but this solution we use runs all the defined processes and captures screenshots as it progresses through and marks each process as a success or a failure. So we can then focus on those failed processes by reviewing and resolving any config issues, or if necessary, alerting Oracle to any software related issues that need to be fixed. And the great thing about this is that it isn't just about the time that you save, it's also about the speed in which the tests are done. So it's that lapse time. It gives us more time in that testing phase to make sure that you're actually ready for that release. The other thing to consider is, Priya spent some time today going through the impact analysis, but some of those are going to be relatively generic, and you may want to look at ones that are specific to your organization. So we can work with you on that, so that you can actually further understand how each of those features will specifically impact your organization. But our services go beyond supporting the quarterly updates, and I'm really excited to tell you a little bit more about the Evosys Next Generation Managed Service and what it can do to help you. So we're passionate about driving business value from Oracle Cloud, and that's why our managed service doesn't just focus on keeping the lights on for our customers. It focuses on what can be done to continually improve the outcomes of using Oracle Cloud apps. We very much see our managed services as a partnership to work with you to enhance your Oracle Cloud experience. And it's not just, as I said, it's not just about keeping those lights on, because we ultimately want you to get business value out of this relationship. So our managed services have a number of options to give you that flexibility and shape the service to meet the specific needs of your organization. Overarching and complementing our managed services is our value-based analytics, or VBA for short. And these are used to measure and monitor business-defined KPIs that focuses the attention on continuous improvement. So there are many areas where the value-based analytics can be used. So I'm going to just take you through sort of, what they're about, but please do then contact us if you want to know a bit more. So we have over 140 pre-built KPIs, which is also equates to about 340 analytics. And they're used to measure and monitor return on investment, and it very much allows you to change that mindset when thinking about your Oracle Cloud. So you begin to look at the proactiveness with that data that we provide you in those reports. Looking at business value, and then all that work that you're doing and all those things, all those changes you want to make, those are changes that are based on fact. The VBAs across the system are separated into 4 main areas. So you have process optimization specific VBAs, you have system adoption specific VBAs, you have information output, and also audit and compliance. So as I said, please do reach out to us if you'd like us to do a demonstration of the VBAs, and so you can see actually how it would benefit your organization. But our next generation managed service is also about empowerment and helping you to drive a lot more self-sufficiency. Some of this is also about leveraging the technology value adds that we use as part of the wider services that we offer. So this includes things like the use of responsive digital assistants, for example. They can help with self-sufficiency, and as well as that, robotic process automation to remove some of those repetitive manual tasks that you may have in your organization. And this then opens up the ability for more focused work on innovation and continuous improvement. And for me, collaboration plays a very important part in innovating. So we continually work together with our customers to drive those innovations. And then lastly, it encourages KPI-driven support as well, part of our managed service. Traditional managed services are just about monitoring ticket numbers and length of time taken to close those tickets based on severity. Now, whilst that is a consideration, we don't just do this. Our KPI-driven approach focuses on giving our customers a good outcome, which ultimately means reducing the number of tickets as well. We work, and the reason for that is because we work on not only resolving the ticket, but also ensuring that that root cause is investigated and resolved to stop further instances from happening. And that then allows us to have more time to work on the other areas that I mentioned earlier. So our approach is also about ensuring that we maintain the service level commitment that we set out at the start with the customer, and to continue to provide that greater value through agreeing on delivering outcomes. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a view as to how we see our next generation managed services. So that kind of starts to bring us to a close on today's webinar, but I just wanted to go through a few closing notes. We're going to make the presentation available to everyone that's attended today, along with the actual session recording, so you can actually replay it and just go through some of those features that Priya took us through. We're also going to provide you with a feedback form. Now, for me, this is really important because we want to make these sessions relevant to our customers and also non-Evosys customers that are using Oracle Cloud. So any feedback that you've got, whether it's positive or where there's room for improvement, please do feed that back, because as I said, we want to make these sessions as relevant as we can for you. Also, do speak out to your project manager or email us at the email address that you can see on screen, specifically for some of those additional services that I spoke about around the quarterly updates, but also if you wanted to know more about the next generation managed services. So this is the penultimate session in the series of webinars that we've held for the 20D release. We have one final one later today on payroll specific functionality for our US customers. So if you have colleagues in the US that you feel would have value in actually attending this session, please do ask them to visit our website up until the actual session starts, and they can actually register. So it's 12 p.m. EST that session starts. So yeah, so please do ask them to register, and so they can get some value out of that as well. But just looking at all of the other webinars that we've done, all of these are actually have been recorded, and the recordings will be available on our website as well. Okay, so that brings us to the very end, where we can answer any questions that you've had today from the session. So please do feel free to ask any questions that you may have.
Looks like there's no question on the chat window, so maybe if somebody wants to ask a question, you can put your hands up so we would be able to. Okay, so there is a question now.
Yeah, so it's a specific question that I can take, Leah, and it's when will the recordings and presentations be available? We try and get the recordings out as soon as possible. We'll look to actually get the recordings and the presentation sent by email no later than Monday. So, Priya, I've got a question for you. So I've just mentioned that we've got the final payroll webinar later on today for some of our US customers. Is there many differences in some of those features and functions that we have in the later sessions?
Yes, so the initial part of the session would be a bit similar, because that would also cover global payroll, and then it would go into specifics of US payroll. But obviously there are certain enhancements at the US for the US payroll as well. So it would partly be, so if there's some attendees who already attend this, so there could be a certain overlap, because global payroll would also be discussed there.
Brilliant. Thank you. Hope that was useful for our attendees. Okay, so if there's no other questions, we can draw the webinar to a close slightly earlier. Thank you all very much for attending, and we hope to see you in the next set of quarterly updates. So please do visit our website at evosysglobal.com to have a look at some of the webinars that we have coming up, but also keep an eye out for the next Oracle release next quarter. Okay, thank you very much.
1 second, sorry, Chris, I see one hand up of Vidya. Could we please unmute her and ask her what's the question that she has?
Certainly.
Vidya, could you please unmute yourself now to ask the question?
Hi, Priya. I was trying to type away since you didn't pick up my hand. The question was about the new starter retro-pay thing you said about. Is that an optional one, or is that now going to be automatically enabled?
As far as I see, if that's going to be automatically enabled, so it's not anything that you have to configure or enable, so it's by default.
And that will impact every element that's attached to the new starter?
Yes.
Okay, and how does that impact the back pay? Because at the moment we have back pay, isn't it? If somebody starts a bit late and they didn't get paid in the last month, this month it'll be just one payment. Let's say, for example, basic pay. It'll be just a one payment, which calculates the back pay as well, and is then paid as one amount. So would that then work with the back pay and figure out, well, there is a retro, hence I'm not going to back pay? Or is that something that you have to go and change with that formula so the back pay doesn't happen anymore?
So, Vidya, if you remember, on 20B, this was first introduced. So there was, I'm sorry, on 20C, it was first introduced, where Oracle had got the back pay logic within the retro. So until 20C, if there was no payroll run, retro pay would never pick it up, right? But from 20C, it started picking up people, even if there were no previous payroll process for that employee. And we have seen that it has not impacted any of our custom logic for back pay. So I don't see that this, which is a continuation of that feature, would actually impact.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's interesting. I'll check because I think we've had this question before, and I was told that we have to enable the feature to have it working and then amend the formulas. But I'll let you know when I check how it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Because this is a continuation feature, Vidya. So if we have not enabled that, this would not have an impact. That is my understanding.
Okay. I
The
don't think we
120,
enabled it.
yeah, we have not enabled it for Croydon.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question, Vidya. Is there anyone else that'd like to ask a question?
Yeah, I see Laura Witz, so I'm going to unmute. Laura, could you please unmute yourself? Laura, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Priya. Thank you for letting me ask a question. I'm just picking up on the question that she's been raised a minute ago.
Apologies, Laura. Apologies. Your voice is not very clear.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
There is an echo, so probably if you're on speaker, maybe that's causing the echo.
Possibly on the laptop.
Okay, do you want to type in your question, Laura? We can wait until you finish typing, if you don't mind.
Are there any other questions from our attendees whilst we wait for Laura to type her question?
I don't see any hands put up except for Laura. So if we have, yeah, there's one from Sandra. So by the time Laura types in, I'll unmute Sandra. Hi, Sandra.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, Sandra, we can hear
Hi.
you. Hi.
When you're talking about adding a reference code to the BACS file for voluntary deductions and pension deductions,
Yes.
we have what's called an accounts payable file, a report called an accounts payable file. So
okay.
You'd have to set the on the element, when you set up the elements, you'd have to have a field to put in the bank details. Is that correct? Is that how it work?
No, this is not the bank detail. Basically, it's a reference code. So I assume it is going to be at the element entry level, probably because you might have a different reference code every time the element is processed on the BACS file, right?
Okay, yeah.
So there's no much detail on that, but I am assuming it's going to be on the element entry level.
Yeah, that I understand. So that information, would that go through when we produce a report to make payments? Would that reference continue with the into the file that we produce?
Yes. So, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I'm trying to get a handle of this. So we have a report called an AP file. And if on each individual deduction for each individual employee, if that reference carries through onto this report, then that would end up on a BACS file. I'm trying to understand if that's what will happen.
Sorry, I have to understand what this AP file is. If it's a custom report, yes, we would be able to get out this reference number onto that report as well, because once it's available in BACS, it means it is archived somewhere. So from there, we would be able to configure your custom report to show that information. So the information should ideally flow through the BACS to AP file as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll discuss it with our local people. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra, for the question. So
yeah,
just let me just read it out for you, Theo. So just in regards to the retro back pay for new starters, this was automatically switched on in 20C, and we found a scenario recently where retro has been paid for a new starter and the amount been included in the spinal salary itself. Could this be right?
As far as I remember, Laura, this was supposed to be configured, if not enabled. So it was not an opt-in feature, it was by default, but then we would be able to use them only if we had configured. That's what I remember, because in all of our customers in UK, because earlier Oracle did not have this feature for backday pay, we have customized that with different formulas, and we've not seen an impact in any of the other customers. So if you have found a recent retro, I am not able to comment at the moment that it could have been because of 20C, because I think it's more than 2.5 months now that we are on 20C. So it could be possible that it's another scenario. I hope I've answered your question, Laura.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And also thank you those that asked the questions. Just before we close, we will answer your question there, Laura. So we're going to have to draw this to a close. So okay, sorry. So Laura hasn't actually got a question. So thank you very much for that. Okay, everyone. So thank you very much for attending the session today. I hope you found it useful, and see you again soon.